What's going on? Let's dive into the top 3 muscle building mistakes that you need to know so that you're not wasting your time in the gym and you can get shreddy and look better naked and be super comfortable in any situation regardless of the amount of clothes that you have on. First and foremost is exercise intensity and rest. Now, what I mean by this is not only the exercise intensity inside of your workouts, but how your workouts are structured, how they're programmed, and then also the rest periods and the rest days. Most of the time, people have a problem with the exercise routine that they're on for a couple reasons. One being that maybe it's too easy, right? Maybe it's way too easy. And because it's so easy, we're going too frequently. There is no need for you to be in the gym pumping iron 7 days a week. In fact, there's a higher likelihood that you'll get more out of it if you're not in the gym 7 days a week. Does it mean you can't move every day? No, you should be moving every day. Does it mean that you can't lift more days than not in the week? No, you can absolutely do that. But the thing that you need to keep in mind is that if you have the capability, you're not getting sore, and soreness is not an indicator of progress, but if you're not getting sore and you're working out 6 or 7 days a week, we probably need to look at a few things. So overall, your exercise intensity is going to be extremely important to build muscle. Most people are not pushing close enough to failure in their working sets, and thereby they're not gaining strength and they're not gaining size that they want to, right? The goal here is to increase your strength, to increase the lean skeletal mass, to increase your muscle mass, right, that you have on your body. It makes it easier to lose fat, it makes it easier to keep it off, it makes it easier to maintain a physique, but you can't get there if your exercise is shit. So the reason why a lot of times people cannot, that should say intensity, sometimes I don't know how to write. The reason why people don't have the ability to push heavier in their workouts is oftentimes overall, right? Oftentimes it's that, hey, they're not pushing heavy enough weight, or more oftentimes than not, even more than the amount of weight that's on the bar, because it's form over everything else anyways, is that they're in a position where they're not taking long enough rest periods, okay? If you were to tell me that you want to get strong as a damn ox, right? You want to be a motherfucking silverback gorilla, you're going to have to take longer rest periods in between your strength cycle, like in between your strength sets, not cycle, excuse me. What that's going to look like is you taking 2 to 5 minutes between going heavy as balls out there close to your max. Now, that's not really something that you're going to be doing in a CrossFit class, right, in the middle of doing 14 other things. But if we're talking about strength specifically, right, your rest periods are probably too short. Now, your rest periods are too short, thereby we're doing way more activity, but we're not getting as much out of it because it's not at the level of difficulty that it needs to be. So how do we fix this? Number 1, you intentionally program your strength training, right? You get a push, pull, hinge, squat, lunge, carry every single week, and we try to both load anteriorly and posteriorly, so forward and back, transverse, diagonal, and then also side to side. So what it's going to look like, right? What it's going to look like is you may be taking, hey, I got bench, squat, I got bench, front squat, back squat, overhead squat. I've got deadlifts, right? And I've got, some Olympic work that I want to do. Okay, you need to program every component of that with ample rest in between. And for me, what I would go is maybe this is just a very easy thing to understand would be like a 3x8 to 10, right? With 90 to 120 seconds between, okay? And that can be, like, this could be not 3x8 to 10, this could be 6x6, this could be, 4x12. Just keep in mind that once you're over 10, you start getting into more of kind of some endurance reps, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you want strength, you want to have these sets pushing somewhere between 75 to 90% of your 1 rep max, right? You want to be working up to that. Not every set needs to be there, but you want to be working up to that on the times when we're trying to push heavier to get strength. That's going to allow you to do that easier, right? But to do that, you're not going to be able to do that with 30 or 45 second Orange Theory fitness rest periods. So like Tabata or EMOM work isn't necessarily going to get you just raw strength gains. Now, you can get some strength and conditioning gains doing EMOM work. Absolutely, I love EMOM work, but you'll have to take that down from 90% and probably closer to like 65 or 70% max there to do that. So overall, right, ample rest periods, 2 to 5 minutes on heavy strength, intentional strength program week over week, trying to hit progressive overload, meaning that every time you come back into the gym, you're trying to push a little bit more, increase the resistance, whether that's in, slowing down the tempo, that's adding more weight, that's getting to more range of motion. Any of those things will suffice for you to grow and move forward. But if you're not pushing closer to failure, right, closer to a higher percentage on the difficulty, right, closer to that 1 rep max, then like it's going to be hard. Now, there are obvious exceptions. Like if you do 6x10, if you do 60 reps at 65%, I mean, you're going to get a very solid pump out of that, and that's okay. So, sport specific, not talking about this, just talking about muscle building in general for Gen Pop, to get you on the path, to spend less time at the gym and be able to shed more fat. So that's going to be there. Number 2 is going to be mobility. And this is predominantly, right, we're talking about hips, right, shoulders, knees, ankles, and pecs. Okay, we're talking about those for now. And like you could also look at, scapular, right? You could look at scapular, and you could also look at like, plus, QLs and obliques. But realistically, what we're looking for is kind of the big couple. So oftentimes, people that are sitting a ton, right? 2 things happen. Well, actually, 4 things happen. 4 things get really tight when you sit a ton. Your shoulders, because we roll forward, because we're usually at in a sitting position. We're usually on the computer or on our phone. Your hips also get tight because they stay, like your quads and your torso, they stay in kind of a 90. And same thing with your knees here. And then ankles, they just don't have mobility. So like they just don't have the ability to push through in ranges while you're sitting. And so most of the time, these 4 things, they come and be super tight. But because we're sitting so much, right? Because we're sitting, 6 to 8 hours a day, what also then becomes super tight is your pecs. Your pecs become super tight because your shoulders get rolled forward, so they get in a shortened position, which then atrophies your back, meaning it makes your upper back and your mid back way weaker. And when that happens, we have an inability to hold our body weight from a pull-up bar. We have an inability to sit straight up with our posture. Even me, I mean, my shoulders sit forward, right? So it's something to keep in mind there. And then we don't have an ability to do any kind of scapular contractions on the floor or hanging. And then our QL, so the bottom outside of your low back, right, gets super tight. And a lot of times, right, if you can open up your hips, you can open up your shoulders, your knees, and your ankles, you're going to be able, the way that you do those is by stretching things like your quads and your hamstrings. And so it's going to open up the other stuff. Most of the time, right, our psoas, iliopsoas, or our hip flexors are going to be super tight, and that's because our quads are super tight, our low back is super tight. Now, it's kind of like a chicken and egg situation because depending on how you got there, one may have preceded the other or vice versa. Either way, though, these things being super tight are limiters for this because you won't be able to squat to the depth that you need to. You won't be able to actually go overhead, arms straight, or from shoulders up, right? You won't be able to squat or get your knee over your toe. You won't be able to balance when you're doing single leg or bilateral work. And then on the pec side, if those are too tight, your shoulders sit forward in a less advantageous position for you to do all things exercise. And so like, how do we fix this? Well, one, if you're sitting a lot, right? If you're hunched over, you need to do the equal and opposite side, right? You need to do the equal and opposite, force the other direction. But also a lot of this, like your back for decompression, your chest, right? Your shoulders, a lot of that can be fixed by just hanging from a pull-up bar, just completely dead hang, right? Even put some straps in your hands so that you don't have to squeeze your bicep and your forearm so much holding up there. You want to complete relax there. But, hips, knees over toes for knees and ankles is going to be very solid. For pecs, if you just run a foam roller up your spine, right, in line with your spine, parallel, and just open your arms wide like a T, or make a goalpost and then let your elbows lead down, that'll open that up. The hips, The hips can be easily done by doing couch stretch, right? Couch stretch, and then also doing Cossack squats. That's also a great place to open. Shoulders hanging, knees and ankles, knees over toes, guys. So Patrick step ups, FHL, calf raises, single leg calf raises, KOT split squats, which is just essentially a split squat like you would set up normally. The difference is you're trying to drive your knee over your toe, and usually your front foot is elevated until you get more advanced. But yeah, mobility, if you don't have it, it will come out in your exercises and in your day-to-day life, and it'll stop you from being able to build muscle as fast as you want and to get that juicy physique that you're looking for, because you will be hindered in your range of motion and in the weight that you can move and the range of motion that you can do safely, right, without pain, right, not discomfort, but without pain. And so it becomes very hard to then get up to where we're pushing at these higher rep or lower rep ranges at higher rate of perceived exertion, right, closer to your max for these sets, because it's painful, right, and we don't want that. So, and sometimes you're stuck, like your lats are stuck. It's going to be very hard to snatch if your lats are sticky. There's adhesions in your back. It's going to be very hard to squat, snatch, and do that, or clean and jerk, or what have you. So that exercise intensity is dependent on the mobility, right? Absolutely dependent on the mobility, but you usually don't notice the mobility until you're in the thick of it with the exercise, and then you're shown kind of where you're super tight. And then protein, right? This is just, right, overall volume. Right, overall volume daily, and timing, okay? And let me be very clear that, like, you're not going to necessarily, if you time all your meals perfect, you're gonna add all this extra muscle. No, what I'm saying here is that overall volume, day over day, right, is going to, now protein with essential amino acids is going to put you in a position where you can build muscle faster, right? But the goal here is really to use protein as one of the levers that you have at your disposal to get ample gains without adding tons of fat at the same time and having satiety, so being full. Now, fat is going to be what gives you the most satiety, right? Eating avocados is going to make you more full than eating the same amount of volume of chicken breast. But if you want to build muscle, you need to have ample protein. And everyone argues on what ample means and what is best for you. But overall volume, in my expertise, which I'm not a registered dietitian, I am a nutritionist, but I'm not a dietitian. Make that very clear that this is not medical advice, nor do you have to hit this number. But most people with me, if you're a man, right, and you're over 100, you're 150, or you're really like 200 pounds plus, I'm gonna try to have you hit a 200 gram target a day, but you have to have ample fiber, okay? Because if you don't have 35 to 50 grams of fiber, well, really like 25 to 50 grams of fiber, if you don't have fiber with your protein, especially if it's more animal protein, it's gonna be hard to digest, right? You're gonna get a little poop stuck in there. So what I would recommend here, at least for what we've done with some of our most successful clients, is that women, we're trying to target between 100 to 150, and men, you know, depending on what you weigh, if you're over 200, 200 is a good marker, right? If you're under 200, somewhere between 150 to 200. Now, protein overall, your overall volume is more important than the timing of your protein. However, when you're going in and you're like, hey, I want, you know, this exercise intensity is a problem for me. It's kind of very difficult for me to do, you know, heavier work more consistently in the gym. Well, I would recommend that, you know, the food that you have prior to coming into the gym is protein and carb heavy and is not fat heavy, right? Because fat digests differently, right, at a different rate than carbs and protein do, and so it's really just because of the way that digestion happens, and I'm trying not to go into super scientific shit, but if you have a ton of fat before you work out, what's going to happen is you're going to feel more lethargic, right? Digestion is going to take a hell of a lot more of blood, right, than necessarily you're going to have if you just have protein and carbs. So overall, we're looking at protein and carb intake prior to exercise and lower fat intake. So it's probably not the best idea to eat a fat ass steak, right? A fat ass red meat steak going into the gym. It might be better to have, you know, something that's a fruit, right? That's higher in sugar, like having some bananas, right? Or having something else that has a high glycemic index, and then having some protein if you want it before you go into the gym, so that you can push with that intensity up. But also just protein overall, right? Protein has been touted as something like you can't digest more than 35 grams at a time. And because of that, you shouldn't eat more than that in one given sitting. Like, there's not evidence to suggest that all of that will just go to waste and go out the window and never be used. But can you only digest a certain amount of protein at a given interval? Yeah, for sure. But that doesn't mean that it just like goes out and you poop it all out. What it means is that, you know, it's then in line to get digest more. Now, I would not recommend you necessarily eating 100 grams at a time unless you're used to that and you have a reason to be doing it. It would be better if you could split up this protein, right? Split up this protein in like 3 to 5 sittings across the day. So like maybe your snacks are protein, and a good way that I like to do it is get like 35 to 50 in the morning, and then have a protein shake that's maybe 2 or 3 scoops, so 40 to 60 grams somewhere in the day, and then have 2 meals, right? Have 2 meals that have, you know, there again, like another 35 to 60, and you should get ample protein in there. Now, this is not medical advice. Let me say this again. I'm not saying that you have to get XYZ protein. What I am saying is that having overall protein being up is important for you to build muscle. So, stay away from fat ahead of the gym. Like in a couple windows, it'll slow you down, right? Energy will just be different. Have something that's gonna smack some sugar in your bloodstream so that you have more energy, so that you don't have to depend on Bang Energy or some of these pre-workouts that have 600 milligrams of caffeine, right? Rocking and rolling. We're trying to build muscle. We're trying to do it. We're trying to do it legitimately. And yeah, if you can get your exercise intensity and rest periods and rest days dialed in, and you can get your mobility to support that, and then you get your protein to support the recovery, right? To support the building after the micro tears that are going to happen from you working in the gym, then you'd be good to go. I hope that helps. Those are 3 tips that I would give you. If you're brand new starting, you're trying to get this figured out, but it's been a little bit difficult, rock and roll with that. Hope that helps.